Hello Patriots from around the world, and welcome to another episode of Fortnite Patriots. This is going to be a short episode. I'm actually working on my next one, but this is kind of important. Of everything that I talk about are things that I never thought I would talk about. When I was younger and I researched this stuff, there was a playfulness and an innocence to thinking this stuff may not be real. But we find out they are, and the truth has to come out. But there's other things that I feel more uncomfortable talking about because I don't want to alarm people. But in this case, I need to do this quick video to kind of explain to you that live on the West Coast and Hawaii area what you need to watch out for. So let's get to it. Normally when I do a breaking weather segment, it's on something that may come to fruition. For instance, I watch weather maps all the time, and if I see something that has potential to become in tropical development, I will go ahead and do a pre-warning because I run future models and everything like that. In this case, this is something that I'm not saying is going to happen, but it's something that I'm really starting to pay attention to, and I think you should as well. In the middle of May, we had a lot of news media coverage of the volcano that's going on in Hawaii, Kilauea. And they talked about the fissures that were opening up and so forth.
The latest violent eruptions spewing fountains of lava.
Oh, watch out, watch out, watch out.
Now at least 19 fissures splitting open in residential neighborhoods.
This is the first time in my life. Scared me to death.
Now the billowing crater atop Kilauea appears ready to blow.
We've also heard massive eruptions, a clear sign the volcanic activity here is far from done.
I think within the last 2.5 weeks, I haven't seen anything on it unless I look it up. So as most people, I just assumed that it was getting better and there was, nothing really to worry about. So I came across a video that really got my attention, and I started doing my own research. One of the things that they mentioned in the original media footage was a geothermal plant that was possibly going to get hit, and they were worried about the effects that it would have. So I did a little bit of digging into this, and the thing that interested me the most was who was associated with it, and it was an Israeli company that was owned by the Rothschilds. And if Q research and the research I've done in my life has taught me anything, there's 4 or 5 names that pop up and you have to go further, and Rothschild is probably at the top of that list. So I started digging a little bit further and found out that there was possible fracking going on in the area of the volcano. Now I want to point this out. You don't frack in an area like that unless you want something bad to happen. And there's no other reason that you would do it, because there is no possible good outcome from fracking next to a volcano. Now, I started looking a little bit further because I have a earthquake chart, basically, that sends messages to me anytime that there's a earthquake over 4.0. And I always check it daily regardless. And let me tell you, there are hundreds of earthquakes going on in Hawaii. And this right here is just from today. I mean, I can't tell you how many of thousands, maybe tens of thousands there have been since this volcano started to go. So I noticed that one thing that the news that I'm finding as I research is saying that the main opening is starting to collapse and cave in on itself. Now, if you understand how something pressurized works, even if that's the only thing that happens and it just crumbles in and creates an area where the pressure can't release, you're going to get a big explosion at some point, a big eruption. Now, one thing I was doing was looking into all the different where the earthquakes were forming around that area, and I noticed a pattern. And let me explain something to you. Nature is not symmetrical. It doesn't work in mathematics. It is spontaneous. There is nothing about it that would be done like a human laying out a grid like this is. This is a perfect grid. So these earthquakes that are going off in this contained area, and look where they're located, right over the opening of this volcano. And this is a perfect patterns. So this has to be man-made. There is absolutely no question. Now, I started finding other people that had noticed this as well, and they all had their own ideas as to what this is. It all came back to the deep state because, like I said, this is man-made. There's no question this is man-made. But why? That's the question. And there's a couple of theories that really got my interest, and one of them was the rod of God.
Is when this caldera gets ugly enough looking, which the entire thing is caved in at this point for this second level crater. The third level crater has not caved in yet, but the second level crater has. And when it looks ugly enough, what they're going to do is they're going to drop a rod of God. Look it up, it exists. A rod of God down the throat of this volcano.
And there was a treaty or something signed back in the 60s that was saying that nobody was allowed to utilize space to use nuclear weapons. Now, the rod of God isn't nuclear.
20-foot long, 1-foot thick rods dropped from high enough that they could reach sound barrier breaking speeds, and again, avoid the fallout associated with nuclear weapons, which were the only thing capable of delivering equivalent damage.
And when it goes down the throat of this volcano, you are going to get an explosion I don't think humans have ever seen before on this planet.
Now, if this was to happen, this is the danger. Right next to it is this area called the Helena Slump. Now, if you don't know what this is, it's an actual peak that kind of picks up and goes over, and the drop is 10,000 feet down. Now, for the most part, if you live on the East Coast and the West Coast of the United States or on any beach, you notice if you walk out, you can kind of walk out gradually and it just gets a little deeper at a time. Well, this slump actually goes straight down. 10,000 feet below ground, 3,000 feet above ground, which is what the Kilauea Volcano Mountain in that area is. Now, if this land, this little peak was to fall off, and if an explosion was created of a giant magnitude, it would create a natural tsunami in every single direction.
This manipulation is not for fun, okay? It is for a reason that has to do with bringing this Helena Slump into the ocean and sending a mega tsunami, according to Berkeley University in California, that would be 1,000 foot high.
I think only surfers and people that are really, really into nautical and weather understand the size of a wave is they measure it from the back. So what you're looking at is actually bigger than 1,000 foot because there's always a drop. Now, 1,000 foot wave is big enough to go all the way in and cover up Nevada. Like, this would be a catastrophic event. This would be something that you wouldn't have the time you needed to get away, and it is a very, very scary scenario. Obviously, the mainstream media is done talking about this, and I don't know why they would be, because it's actually getting worse, even as far as the volcano goes, than it was 2.5 weeks ago when they stopped talking about it. So keep that in mind. I need everybody just to pay attention, watch, and don't be afraid. Just like I said, hopefully I am completely wrong. I want to thank everybody for joining us again for another episode of Fortnite Patriots. Like I said, I don't like having to talk about these things because it may or may not happen. I don't want to scare you. But one thing that I have noticed is when media stops talking about something, when things are actually still escalating, you need to pay attention to it. Nature does not create symmetry. It doesn't do things mathematically. So when you start to see patterns, it's man-made. And what it gives me a little bit of hope is that the people that are doing this are kind of running the whole liberal and Democrat movement right now, and they need those votes. So if they were to implement this, then they would be taking out all their voters. So I would say that if something did happen, just keep an eye on the news, and if you start seeing for sure that it's going to be a red wave, which I'm pretty sure it's going to be, start taking caution and watch the news. Thank you very much, and I'll see you next time.